police knocked on the door and told Daddy, says, Preacher Smith says it's been reported to me by some of the policemen that your son is driving into town at 80 miles an hour, or at 70 miles an hour. Driving too fast, entirely too fast. And Daddy hollered back in the house and said, Frank Jr. He come up there and he says, the chief here says that you've been driving into town doing over 70 miles an hour. He says, is that correct? Frank says, no, sir. So that's a lie. Chief told him, says, no, says that's true, son. Says it's been reported that you've been seen driving that fast. Frank says, that's a lie. Says the last time I come in there, I was doing 92 miles per hour.
Lord have mercy. Is that where you got a ticket?
That's where me and him would been to Greenville. I was with him. We come back from Greenville out there on the where the highway comes back into 101. I think I've showed it to you every time we've been by there. But it used to be an old peat shed set up there on top of on the side of a hill where the road would come back into Highway 101, and it was dirt roads back then. And there was a patrolman sitting there on 101, and Frank didn't stop. He just slowed down, and we could see that policeman sitting over there. And Frank didn't stop. He just slowed down and looked, and then just kept on going. The patrolman stopped him, turned the siren on and stopped him. Frank asked him, says, well, I want you to tell me one thing. What is the difference in me slowing down and me stopping when I could see a mile both ways up the road and couldn't see nothing coming? The patrolman said, son, says there's only $2 difference in it. Fined him $2.
Lord, it must. That was a lot of money back then, though.
Probably like 50.
Okay, y'all done went back to wood before y'all go.
What, that the Whitmire.
We go back before.
Well, we lived on Plainer Hill. We moved to Plainer Hill in Whitmire. They was building some little houses, a little row of houses, and we moved in one of them. And you know who moved into not the one beside us, but the next one over? Tom's daddy and mama moved in there right after when they got married.
Oh, really?
And that's where they lived. They lived there when we lived there, but of course, we didn't know it, and they didn't know it. He said he knew that there was a preacher lived out there, but he didn't know who he was. He lived in that first house.
Well, Bobby Jordan married Dr. Lake's daughter from Whitmire, and I met him, and you know, used to when Jimmy and Carla was married, I saw Dr. Lake a lot of times, and he remembered when Daddy lived in Whitmire. I mean, we lived right down below him, and he said he remembered Daddy living there. But
Well, Tom's daddy, Earl Stroud, says he remembered a preacher living there, but he didn't know who he was.
I remember who lived on out in another house. It was about the fourth house. It was Probst.
yeah, I remember that.
Cause I remember that little boy that they sent down to the bottom of the hill to the store, and one day they sent him after some eggs, and he come up the hill.
Done scrambled them?
No, he was crying. I dropped him and I busted him. I remember that. Said, don't be so smart, Willie. Now I dropped him and I busted him. He's telling him before he got home with them broke eggs that he didn't want them to be so smart, Willie.
Okay,
And we
where'd you
moved
go
to
from?
Vernon Lawrence.
You moved to Lawrence up there.
On the Yarberville Road in a little
that's
creosote house.
That's
Well,
where
it's
Mr.
garden
Zeno had
spot.
typhoid fever, like died.
Yeah. I like to die too, carrying him home from church that Sunday morning. We went to me and Lois and Tharp went to Sunday school that day. And we started home, and Tharp, Tharp had told me in church he was sick, so we got up and left. And
I don't remember.
he was so
That was
sick.
where the church was on Augusta Street. wasn't it?
Yeah, and he was so sick.
We lived up there on
And and I would carry my and I was little.
9 years old or 8 years old.
Yeah, and I was real little then. I mean, I was as tall as I am now, but I was.
All y'all's names, y'all were all members, cause we got the records. Y'all's names is on the,
Oh, mine wasn't.
you don't think, I believe it
I
was.
know it. No, it wasn't.
It
I
was.
never did join the church till Pearl Harbor Day, 1941. December the 7th, 1941 is when I joined the
Black
Well,
church.
there was a bunch of
When
them.
I joined the church for the first time. I had never joined
Well,
the church in
anyway,
my life.
Okay.
I don't remember, let me tell you, I don't remember that. I don't remember much about that
But
sickness at all.
listen, you was so sick and your fever was so high, and I would carry him a while, and I'd have to sit down and rest, and I'd say, Tharp, you got to walk. I can't carry you in
That's
there.
a long way.
And he couldn't walk. He was so sick. Instead of me letting Lois go on home and getting somebody to come back and help me, and you know I
She
practically
probably
carried.
didn't know the way.
I practically carried that young'un all the way home, and his fever was so high, and
He's not
he was so
heavy,
weak.
he's my brother.
Yeah, but he was heavy, and he
She
was my
was so
brother.
short, you don't,
Yeah.
Well,
you
I-
remember how short Billy was?
No, I was as tall as I am now, cause
Well, but you
ever
was
since I
still
was
short.
ever since I was 12 years
But you
old.
was 13.
But I absolutely do not remember a lot about living in Lawrence at all, because I was sick just about the whole time we lived there. I don't remember much about Lawrence, but I remember Whitmire, Woodruff, but I don't remember Lawrence.
Well, how long did y'all live in
We
Lawrence?
didn't
About
live,
6 months.
we didn't live very
Daddy
long.
resigned
Daddy
the
had-
church in Whitmire. He didn't.
And
stay
then
there.
and then that October, he went to work in the old mill fixing wounds. And then that October, they give him Westminster Church.
Yeah, J.D. Bright sent him to Westminster because when J.D. Bright was a baby, Daddy rocked him in a cradle and turned him over. He said, and I'll get even with you. So when we went to Westminster, Daddy said, you're even with me now.
Which church in Westminster was
There was
it?
only
no,
one
but-
there.
The tallest one.
Well, no, it's not the one that
It's
Funderburg
not the
said.
Calvary Church, but the one
It's
in
the one
Tucker
right
in
there,
Westminster.
Right in.
right across the street from where it is right now, directly across the street from where the church is there now.
And we lived right on the corner.
Somebody
The
had just
church was
built-
right here
they
on,
had- the
on
church
this
hadn't
side,
been
and we lived
organized
right on the
long.
corner,
They
right
built just an old church
across from it.
in a little old building. And he just stayed there 1 year.
Is that where you just had one pair of overalls?
That's where and they was found in the smokehouse out behind the house.
Well, now he had on some clothes when he went there. Now what did he
Oh yeah,
have?
but they wore out. And there was an old pair of overalls hanging
Your
in that
sisters were not
smokehouse. It was
saying.
about four sizes too big for me. But that's what I wore.
Bless his heart.
And somebody that went to church, Clark's was a Smarts,
Started.
Sargents. And that girl that she had a pair of
Christine.
had a pair of lace-up boots that I thought was so pretty. They were boys' boots, but anyway, they give me that pair of boots.
Christine or Maxine?
I don't know which one.
Christine was the
Maxine
oldest
was the
one.
one that was about my age.
Well, I don't know which one it was, but the pair of boots was a pair of lace boots. They were knee boots, all the way up to your knee. And I thought them was the prettiest boots that I'd ever seen before in my life. And their mama, they took them off that kid and give them to me. And then I do remember a Christmas play there that I was in the play,
And I said Annie and Willie's prayer.
and
That's where
I said something about Christmas is coming and the turkey's getting fat.
Please drop a nickel and
The old man said, but anyway, I was supposed to get up there and say that, and that woman introduced me as Tharp Sharp.
Yeah, that's what she called you, and
Yeah.
she said she forgot and said it.
She introduced me as Tharp Sharp.
And you got there and said your little.
Yeah.
I remember the first piece I ever said in church too, and it was in Winsboro. Let's see, I don't forgot. Oh, Christmas is coming, the turkey's getting fat. Please drop it. No, that's
that's
what
what
you
I
said.
said.
No, what was it I said? It was some kind of little something. I said it with Winsboro. Oh, what was it? I won't want some fruit and I want some candy. If Sandy'll bring it, he'll be a Jim Dandy.
And then from there, we moved to Blacksburg. And on our way to Blacksburg, I remember us going through Greenville, and I'll tell you exactly where it was. It was at Augusta Road and Pendleton Street. Seen Johnny and Lee Boozer. When we pulled up to a red light, Johnny and Lee pulled out from Augusta Road. We was going up Pendleton Street. We was on our way to Blacksburg.
She lived up there on Florida.
You remember that? Well, I do.
All I remember is moving from Blacksburg, and Daddy had given Cubby away. What Cubby?
Moving from Blacksburg.
The day we moved,
They moved
Daddy
to
had given my Spitz dog away.
Well, we got
So
another
anyway.
one when we got to Chester, though.
He-
She had all kind of puppies on the back porch. I remember.
Well, that's when we lived at Blacksburg.
No, it's when we moved to Chester. We had a dog at Chester.
Well, he took the little old dog, and when we got to Chester, that little old dog had distempers, don't you remember? And Daddy had to have the thing killed.
But we had one that had puppies, a Spitz
What?
dog.
Well, where did y'all have that dog that was cross-eyed?
That was in
That was
Winslow.
in Winslow.
Cross-eyed
That
Bess.
wasn't our dog.
It wasn't.
That was somebody else's. Who'd that dog belong
Lige
to?
Johns.
Okay, y'all in,
It was in
Chester now?
Blacksburg.
Oh.
Blacksburg.
Daddy built that church, he said, in Blacksburg right now. And I remember they used to have quilting parties, and they called it the band stand.
Yeah.
It was down in front of the mill. It wasn't nothing but a big old gazebo that was glassed in.
Well, that's where they had parties and
Yeah.
stuff, and
and then go quilt.
And
then-
Garfield Martin.
Garfield Martin.
He was one of them there
He
things.
was,
you know,
Oh, he was,
And
that
they
was about
lived,
the first
they,
ones out.
Oh,
First
they
one
but
out.
they lived right diagonally across from us. Well, the road went up this way and come out, and they lived right here in that corner. We lived across from the old boarding house there, and they
Oh.
lived over on the other next corner.
On Saturday night, he'd dress up in long dresses and high heel shoes.
It
put on
had have a mouthful of snuff.
Put on makeup.
But anyway, Daddy
like a
built-
girl.
well, where would he go? Oh, y'all
He'd
see
go out looking for him a man,
walking around the street.
Go out hunting him somebody.
hunting him a man.
Daddy was building this church at Blacksburg, and they'd have a dinner and supper about every week or every month or something. And Granny Martin would make the dumplings. And everybody said, "Ooh, can't nobody make dumplings like Granny Martin." So one day Granny Martin was sick, and they said, "Well, we can't have the dinner because there's nobody to make the dumplings."
Garfield made him.
And Daddy said, "Billy can make the dumplings." Well, they didn't believe it. And Lord, I won't ever remember how many dumplings I made for that dinner. But everybody got off of work that evening, and and they was eating. Ooh, this is so good. Said, "Can't nobody make dumplings like Granny Martin?" Somebody said, "Well, Granny Martin didn't make them dumplings." And somebody said, "Who made them?" And they told them, and see, they didn't even know the difference. And it was like, nobody could make dumplings like Granny Martin.
There's a guy that drives with us that lived in Blacksburg back then. He remembers Daddy. You know, remember where you go up in the boarding house there and you turn back to the left? We lived first house on the right. But if you went straight on up, there's a big hill back up there. Well, he lived up on top of that hill somewhere, and I don't.
John Jenkins' mama lived right behind us. If you went up that hill, in the street, they run behind us. And
Yeah.
his mama lived right behind us. Our garden was up on a hill.
And that's the school burned down there with me too.
That's how you got
Well,
out.
that school had already
That's-
burned down when we got
They
there.
was building a school.
Was they
They
building?
was building a school
And
in,
we had to go to school
We
in
went
the
to
up
the
library.
church.
In the library.
at downtown in the old city hall.
Well, I went in
Well,
the
I went in
library.
a church.
I went into city hall.
Well, I went in the library.
Well, they was three. We all three went to different places. the old city hall is where I went to school.
Well, they had school in different buildings
Because they didn't have nothing big enough for
But then
everybody.
Then when school started
But
back
we
that
went
year,
back
we
in
went-
that school.
We went into the new
New
school.
school.
When school started back.
That was in Blacksburg.
That was in Blacksburg.
The school was just right up the street from where we lived.
And that's where Frank and Bordy both went in service. Frank went in the Marine Corps and Bordy went in the Navy.
Morty didn't go in the Navy till we moved to Chester.
Oh, yes, he did.
He went
He did not, because we moved to
No,
Chester.
that's
and
right,
worked
he did,
there.
that's
because he
right.
worked in A&P store downtown,
Yeah,
delivered
yeah,
groceries to
yeah,
the
sure
store downtown
did.
in Chester.
Lois, you remembered it.
I remember
But
that.
Frank went in the Marine Corps there.
Because
February the 7th.
Morty hadn't been gone all that long when Mama
1942.
died.
Frank
Yeah.
went in February the 7th of 1942.
And Morty went in
Went
January.
in 2 months after Pearl Harbor.
Yep.
Morty went in January
went to-
43.
He went
Well,
to
you
Paris Island and stayed 6 weeks. Quantico,
And straight
Virginia
overseas.
State, and Quantico, Virginia stayed a week, and right on to San Diego, and almost a week, and right on overseas. Never did get to come home.
And then y'all
Never
moved to
did come
Chester.
home till Louise seen him when he first come home.
Well, y'all,
He
have
had
y'all
already
moved to
married
Chester?
Louise.
Y'all get moved to Chester and get to Greenwood so Mama can come
We
on.
went to, I remember the day we was moving from Blacksburg to Chester. Grandma hadn't heard from Daddy in a while.
We was already in the car.
We was dead. The truck had already gone with our furniture. And we was all loaded up in the car, fixing to pull out, and we looked, and here come Grandma walking from town.
just
She
got
had
off the
caught
bus.
the bus and
Oh.
come to Blacksburg. She didn't know was moving that day. And she had come on the bus and didn't let Daddy know she was coming or nothing.
And we would already been gone if I hadn't been out there
She
hunting
been
my
in was
dog.
hunting her dog, and Daddy had given
And
her
Daddy
away.
had give the thing away, and we would
And
already
she
been
was
out there.
crying and having a fit, but then Daddy couldn't leave.
What'd she do, just go on with y'all?
Yeah,
she
she
was.
had to stop and pick her up, put her suitcase in the car. She was walking from town. She had got off of the bus and was walking. Daddy said, "Ma, why didn't he call her Ma? Why didn't you let us know you was coming?" "Bob, I didn't know you was moving today. You ought to let me know you was moving." He said, "Well, I didn't know you was coming." They both hollered at each other, you know. She got in the car and went on to Chester with us. But if it had been just a few minutes later, I don't know what she'd have done. She
Should've went back
said,
home.
"I done went back, got on the bus and went back home."
But she lived in Greenville.
She lived in Greenville. But that's the way she was.
Well, how long did y'all live
She
there
lived in
before your
Paris
mama
now.
died?
In Chester.
Yeah.
We moved to Chester.
6 months. We lived there 6 months.
What was it when we moved there in October and
She
moved
died in April.
till I know she lived till April. But Daddy had resigned the church in Chester.
Daddy was
Mama
in
died.
South Greenwood when Mama died.
Well, he preached a homecoming in Spartanburg on Sunday, and then went on to Greenwood on Monday to find a
They
place to
sent
put
him
the tent.
to South Greenwood to find a location to put a tent, to organize South Greenwood Church. And he was in
Separate the church.
Greenwood there that day when Mama died. Didn't know it till he got home that night, about 11, 12 o'clock.
I thought the
They
movie
tried
called
to
State
find-
Overseer.
She did,
She
but they
did, but they
couldn't
couldn't
locate him, and he
touch
didn't
with
know a
him.
thing till he got home that night and saw lights all on and cars there. Come in and Mama was dead. He'd been gone since Sunday morning, early.
Well, did y'all have a funeral there?
Now, the funeral was at Tremont
Tremont
Avenue.
Oh,
Avenue.
Funeral at Tremont Avenue in Greenville.
L.W. McIntyre and Will Rainey. Jim Clevenger was supposed to help with it, and he said he couldn't because that was just like his sister, and he couldn't help. But Will Rainey and L.W. McIntyre and Belle Ellis and McIntyre's wife's son.
And then we moved to South Greenwood, and that's where Louise come in.
We had a
Oh,
tater
Mama.
patch, didn't we?
We had a tater patch, and I plowed it up and got wood.
He was telling us about that. I never had heard that.
Hey, he's talking about that goat that somebody traded him for Tharp.
Uh-huh.
Well, anyway, Daddy bought a goat out there before we lived on the 96 highway. And every time I'd go out that door, that goat would chase me. I couldn't even go to the bathroom because that goat would chase me every time I'd stick my head out the
That's
door.
where Daddy he'd order baby chickens, order he'd have ordered 200 or 300 baby chickens and raised
For the
chickens, and we'd
church.
come home from church, and Ruby or Billy wanted to go out there and wring chickens' necks, and they'd skill them, and that's what we'd fix for dinner, or what they'd fix for dinner.
Well, I never did know how to skin them till them women, when they was working in the tater patch, they'd come out there and one day on Saturday, and Daddy said, well, said if we'd have thought about it, we could have just killed some chickens, you know, and had them for lunch. They said, well, why not? So they got out there and wrung their necks and just skinned them, you know. It didn't take but just a few minutes. From then on, I know how to skin a chicken.
But who was them people lived down behind us that had that old club-footed mule?
Lord, I don't know.
You know who I'm talking
I know
about?
who you're talking
Y'all live
about. I
in the
remember.
village?
No, do you remember who that was, Louis?
I don't remember who it was.
Do you know where I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Then?
I know where you're talking about. Where you want me to sit?
Yeah, but they lived on that over
Right
here.
Yeah, get over as close to Billy as you can.
Down back behind us where
In
we
the
lived
edge
out
of
there
the woods. In the edge of the woods.
yeah, and they had a clubfoot mule, and Daddy told them, Daddy wanted to borrow it.
I know we would go.
And Daddy told them, says, well, look, if y'all will let me borrow your mule, I'll have my son take it to town to get it shoed. And I took that club-footed mule. That mule was blind and club-footed. And where we lived, I had to take that mule all the way up Newmarket Street in Greenwood to the blacksmith. And I'd ride it a while and walk it a while because it's razorback, and that old thing cut right into my butt. And I'd walk it a while, and then I'd ride it a while. And I was gone all day long to take that mule up there to get shoes put on it. And when we got back, where we'd planted them potato slips, we would have to get out there and hoe them things. Y'all might remember hoeing them. And I got tired of hoeing potatoes, and Daddy told me to go down there and get that mule. We still had to hoe them to put the dirt up around the slips. But Daddy told me to go get that mule to come up there, and he was going to teach me how to plow. To plow them potatoes, to plow the rows. And he taught me, and he went to the house, and he come back out there, and I'd done plowed up 2 or 3 rows of them things.
What made him think about it, JG was telling about somebody letting him plow and he couldn't hold it in straight.
Well, I'd done that on purpose.
You did.
Yeah, because I didn't want to have to hoe them no more.
Oh my Lord.
But I know Daddy whipped me for it.
Did he?
Yes,
I
he did.
remember picking them up when they was plowed up.
Well, I never did go work no potatoes, and I never did go to the potato patch.
I had to help set them out, and I had to help.
Well, we done got them taters for you and Daddy married.
Oh, me and Papa courted while y'all worked the potatoes.
Working.
Yeah, he bring y'all sacks of potatoes. Yeah.
Well,
Papa,
now the potatoes belong to the church.
the potatoes belong to the church, but I didn't work in the potato patch.
Well, I didn't know who they belonged to. I know
They belong to the church.
but nobody come out there and worked them except us, did they?
I don't
Yes, some of
know.
them women
But anyway, the first date we had,
Daddy Barfield.
Papa said, if they know what we was doing, said they'd kill us. Said if they knowed I'd come to pick you up and date you, said they'd want to kill us. But anyway,
That's what some of them other women was coming out there for, and Daddy'd leave.
they'd come by my job every day, and they'd say, "Come on, let's go to the preachers this evening." I said, "We going out to the preachers?" I said, "No, I ain't going." Well, when me and Papa got married, they quit coming. And I told them, I said, "Well, I got the preacher, and I got the chickens." They quit coming.
Yeah, you had a yard full of chickens.
Yeah. They didn't come no more after we married. And there was 2 old maids there. Y'all remember them 2 old maids that was so mad at me because I was going with Papa. They said I was too young, said he didn't need me and I didn't need him. They wanted it.
I remember
Mary-
some old woman that stayed there with
Sellers.
Alex.
Sellers.
Sellers.
James Allen's
McConnell.
James Allen's
Mary,
mom.
Yeah.
Mary McConnell.
Mary McConnell. She wanted it.
But them old Powell sisters is who she's talking
Yeah, I'm talking about Mary and Leo Powell.
I don't know.
Wouldn't you like to have one of them for stepmama?
They got mad because Daddy wouldn't pick them up,
Yeah.
and everybody else said, the preacher said, we was young enough to walk. Daddy told him he had young'uns to haul, he couldn't pick up everybody. And they said, well, your young'uns is young enough to walk. Daddy said, my young'uns don't. He said, I don't leave put my young'uns out to walk, to haul nobody to church. Said,
Are they the ones lived out there on the road, on the Newmarket Road?
Yeah. Yeah. And they had a dog.
I remember that dog sang.
Said that
Yeah.
dog-
You'd pray and that dog would howl and growl. They said that dog's singing.
They was crazy.
They was crazy. Oh Lord, they got
Live beside the Church of God of Prophecy
Yeah,
out on
that's
Newmarket
where
Yeah,
Road.
that's where they live.
But I remember they wanted Daddy to haul them and somebody else to church, and Daddy told him he couldn't do it. He didn't have room. And said, I got my children. They said, well, your children's young enough to walk. And Daddy mad. He said, my children's gonna ride. Said they don't walk.
Church
Me
members think
all-
they own the preacher, don't you?
Yeah, but them old women telling him, put us out and let us walk. And we live way farther than they
Way
did.
out in the country.
Well, maybe we was just supposed to walk from their house.
You didn't think they said, did you?
Well, anyway, I'm glad Daddy had sense enough to
Then
tell
your
them.
mama built that house right down behind there.
Yeah.
They built that house.
You know,
After her husband died, after
Boston.
Reeves.
Rings.
Oh,
After Rings died, mother built that house.
Where'd y'all move from Greenwood?
Lay France.
The LaFrance.
Boscobel.
No, it was across the
Start
street from
went
Boscobel.
out over and picked up balls in Boscobel.
I used to go over and caddy at Boscobel. Daddy didn't know it. If he had known it, well, he did catch me one time and give me a whipping because golf was a sin back then.
Oh yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
It was a sin to play golf back then.
Everything
Everything
was a
was
sin.
a
When we
sin.
grow-
Sin.
When we was growing up, everything
Well,
was a
me
sin.
too.
You wasn't supposed to wear short sleeves. You wore
Everything
short
was a
sleeves.
sin. Some of
That's
the
what-
church members got mad because Daddy let me and Billy wear anklet socks. Told them he ought to put them old thick cotton stockings on us.
That's where-
Impels her.
That's where I had
remember
one pair of
that.
corduroy pants and I'd have to go to bed so Louise could wash them.
But why
Well,
would
that
you?
is
Helen
true.
Mar got up in church and told the people in church that I didn't have but one pair of pants and they had to go to bed so that Louise could wash my pants.
Well, I remember a lot of times we didn't have but one good dress.
And we didn't, well, I don't remember just having one, but we had
Well, I mean,
They'd be made out of
ragged stuff.
flour
I
sack,
didn't have
feet
but
sack.
one pair, period.
Well, we'd have old ragged stuff we'd have to put on when we come in, but we had.
Well, Mama
maybe
sewed,
one
I guess
good
that's the
thing.
reason we could
Well,
have.
Mama did too when we was growing up,
Yeah.
but then after Mama got sick,
Yeah.
wasn't able to. So,
And then Helen Mar caught Tharp smoking under the church. at
Oh,
the
that's
Frank.
where I hid my cigarettes under the church.
And she told Papa,
But Daddy knew I smoked.
and
Your mama always took up for
Oh,
Tharp.
Lord.
Oh, Lord, she.
now let him do it. Let him.
Uh-huh.
And he'd want to go up to the Landers. He'd come in and want to go up to the Landers.
Well, that's
Maybe-
cause me and
and
Johnny
maybe
smoked.
Papa wouldn't want him to go, and she'd beg for us to let him to go, you know. And I know Helen Mar run a revival, and I cried the whole time she was there because I didn't understand her. And she'd come in and I'd be cooking, and she'd say, "What are you cooking?" And I'd tell her, "Well, I don't eat that." And I'd run to Papa, squalling. I said, "Sister Mara come in there and said she don't eat what I'm cooking." He said, "Well, let her eat it or leave it."
Well, that's the reason him and her got along so fine. Because
Well,
they
she-
argued with each other.
She'd take off to the store and buy stuff and come back and make spaghetti. Well,
I guess that's the first time we ever eaten this spaghetti.
I guess
we
it
never had
is.
spaghetti till she.
Well, we never had till Mama made it up there when Bordy was sick as
Well, she,
Spartanburg.
Helen Mar
Yeah,
made it.
she showed me how to make it. But the only thing she loved that I made was lemon pie. And she could eat a whole one. And when I'd make it, you just made one?
Didn't make none for nobody.
She would sit down and eat cornbread and milk with Daddy.
Yeah.
And tell
Yes, she
Bill
ate cornbread
made
meal.
her eat slaw.
And eat baked sweet potatoes.
Yeah.
And he said, that's hog slaw.
She said, Bill,
But she
they
had
made
eaten
me
it.
eat
She
slaw.
tell Bill, guess what they made me eat? Cornbread meal, slaw.
And Tharp would tell everybody that killed hogs we love sausage there. And
Well,
I,
we get it too.
and yes, we did.
Yeah,
And I
so
canned
that's
sausage,
it.
I cooked sausage, I canned sausage.
We didn't have no refrigerator even.
And I had to
We
I had
ice
to can
box,
it.
but you had to can that sausage to
I remember Daddy had about 5 goats there at one time, and he killed one of them and canned it.
Yeah, he killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did that in Greenwood.
Well, he killed one at South Greenwood,
Yeah.
canned it, but in La France he had 5 goats
Because
one time in La
Grandma had
France.
always said she'd never eat goat meat, and then he
Well, that one in
tricked her in
Yeah.
Greenwood.
That
and
was stunk.
It was good.
That one in Greenwood was an old billy goat that stunk.
Well, no, he got a
Still
heifer
stunk
when
again.
Daddy killed one.
Yeah,
He got a heifer when y'all lived at Dennery from Daddy. Because I helped
Some
Daddy kill
goat
it.
meat was good and he fixed, but that in Greenwood was terrible. It was rank.
goat
It must have been an old
Old
Billy.
billy goat.
goat meat
Instead
and
of a
deer
young
meat is
tender
two
one.
things I don't like.
And then it
In La
was,
France he had nanny goats and he had to milk them.
yeah.
Oh Lord.
And do you
Oh,
remember,
we used milk.
I had to milk them till Louise learned how.
do you remember the time when we had a birthday party for Mother, I believe? And I went to pour the dishwater out of something the back door.
In La France.
And there was a man
That was when
standing.
Daddy was gone to
And
the
Papa,
assembly.
yeah.
And it
And there
scared me
was,
to death.
and there was a man standing there. I like to pour water on
Blanche
him.
Nelms was there.
Yeah, yeah.
She
And
died
Tharp
when
got the gun.
Her death was in the paper. They brought her back.
Tharp got the gun, and he was just a shaking.
But it was an old musket, an old muzzle loader that wouldn't shoot to start with.
He was gonna protect all y'all women.
World War I muzzle loader.
Frank had it, but what
Frank
was
got
that?
it, but I don't know whatever happened to it.
I don't either. Anyway,
But the old man lived up across the street from us, come down there and looked around to see.
yeah, he did. And I know his
I
wife,
can't think of his name.
his wife said one day, said, I want to know who the mama is
Well, that
down
was
there.
when we first moved.
Said, I want to know who the mama is. I said, well, I'm the mama. And she got so tickled. She said, well, I've seen so many women down there. I wondered who the mama was. I said, well, I'm the mama. So,
Her
Yeah.
mama was there, and Ruby and Billy and
Yeah.
Billy.
Y'all were all grown.
and I never will forget Bernice come and stayed a week with us one time while we was
There's
there.
another one.
And we had fish for supper. And you know, you had to allowance them because we just had so many.
Yeah.
And remember I cut them into, I said, everybody's got a top and a bottom. And Bernice talks about that.
Yeah.
She
She
said
mentioned
that-
the last time we was
She
out
said out and wrote Frank about we had a top and a bottom for supper that night.
She could have stayed with us a lot of times because
Yeah.
Frank was overseas.
But that time she was there, I had fish, and I said, now everybody's got a top and a bottom.
Well, Bodie was still in service there too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Both of them was till we moved to
And
Florence.
that's where, and that's, yeah, and then Frank come back, well,
Frank
Frank
come home while
Frank
we was
is-
there, but Morty never did come home while
And-
we lived in LaFrance.
Frank could bring me, Frank was stationed in Charleston. And he'd bring me cigarettes and I'd hide them under the church so Daddy wouldn't know that Frank could bring them
Is
to
that
me.
right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Frank brought me cigarettes and, because he could bring them from the base because he could get them for 10 cents a pack.
Yeah.
Morty didn't come home till we moved.
And I would hide my cigarettes under the church. But Frank told Daddy, he says, you might as well let him smoke and you might as well know about it because he's going to smoke and ain't no sense in him hiding it. And Daddy says, if he ever smokes one in front of me, I'll push it down his throat. He says, I know he smokes, but if he ever lights one in front of me, I'll put it down his throat.
What?
And I knew that I better hide him under the church.
Yeah, and you remember the time Blanche Nelms, you and Ruby had been to see Blanche. You remember that? And I was washing. And
Which time?
well, I'll tell you, I was washing and I was all wet and I'd been washing all day and y'all come in and said, get in the car. Blanche has got to go to the hospital right now.
That was on a Saturday.
No, it wasn't because
Oh.
I was washing.
Well, she had that baby on a
Well,
Saturday.
anyway, this is the day the baby was born.
Well, you probably had to wash every day if you had all
Well,
these people.
anyway,
Well, she didn't have to wash every day for me because I didn't have but one
Oh,
time.
bless your heart.
Papa said, honey, just like I left the wash tub. And Blanche said, and she borrowed our suitcase that had Brother Smith's name on it. And she said, when I get there, they're gonna say, Mrs. W. Frank Smith's got a baby. And I had to go in.
She didn't have no sense.
And I had to go in the hospital with her looking like I looked in the wash tub. And boy, I was scared to death. Papa like scared me to death.
He drove to Anderson. It was 11 miles, and he drove it in 9 minutes.
I was scared to death, and we just didn't get her there in time.
See, her husband
It
was
was
in
her
service,
third baby,
He was in
and boy, she
service.
had her quick.
And Ruben Lewis and myself took turns spending the night with her, you know, to keep her from
She
being by
scared the
herself.
and that was
She
in
took-
LaFrance.
That's where I first train I ever rode. She took me to Anderson with her on the train one time.
And then we moved to Florence.
Well, that's the first time I ever rode a bus.
I never had rode a bus either till we
We
lived
went-
in France.
we went to Walhalla.
And we got to Florence, and we had a little three-room house and a back porch hauled in.
I showed it to her.
And they was painted.
All that's in that church history.
And we had to put our things in the middle of the floor
You gotta tell me.
Yeah, I
till
got you.
they
one.
got through painting. We didn't know a living soul. Brother Bennett come by,
Ruby one.
and he took us home with him for supper.
Billy's husband?
Billy's husband, Brother
He
Bennett.
wasn't then.
He
No,
was.
he wasn't then.
He already had a wife then.
Yeah. So we went to their house for supper that night, but we'd sit on the porch with our pocketbook, and Tharp would go get us popsicles.
There was a little store across the street.
Well, anyway, we went and
we
eat
sit out
supper.
there and eat pop.
Satchers.
Yeah.
Hey,
Satchels.
Satchels.
We went and eat supper with the Bennetts that night. And they got to talking about separating us, and Mother said, well, I'll tell you right now, if I'm going to stay with the girls. Said, you ain't going to separate me. Well, Ruth Rigsby didn't want us, but we went to her house.
you and Daddy.
Me and Papa went to Ruth Rigsby's house. She didn't want us, but we went there.
Well, she
We-
was ashamed of
We
her
didn't know
house.
she didn't want us, but she was
Just
ashamed.
lived in a little old country house.
But anyway, we didn't know a living soul. And we finally got straightened up after they got through painting the
I think I
house.
slept with Tommy.
You stayed
And
with
we had to
Tommy
put
and me and Ruby
the
and Billy
the
and Miss
stove, we had an
Stoddard
oil
always slept in that
stove.
big old room that
And we had to put the
one
oil
that
stove
Frank
in the
and
bedroom.
Her and her girls.
And
lived
put
in
part,
that
it was way up off of the floor. We had to put part of the
Lucille
stuff
Carter
under
was
the
her
floor
name.
to manage to get everything. And there was 7 of us that lived in that little 3-room house and back porch hauled in till we could get somewhere else to
Had the
move to.
stove in the back
Had
bedroom.
the stove in the back
The kitchen
bedroom.
wasn't even big enough to put the cook stove in.
And we lived in that.
With
There was
Tharp's cot.
7 of us, yeah.
With what?
With Tharp's cot.
Oh.
Thought
Okay.
Pop was put in our,
He slept in the
he
kitchen.
slept in the room with me and you and Ruby on a cot. Oh,
He slept
Well,
in
where,
the
Mom,
kitchen
where
on
did
the
you and
cot.
Papa go on your honeymoon?
Huh?
Where did you and Papa
To
go
the
on your
assembly.
We
honeymoon?
went to Birmingham, Alabama on our assembly.
Well, you didn't-
on
And left
our-
all them young ones behind,
you
didn't you?
didn't leave the day you got,
Oh,
the night
no,
you got
we
married.
didn't
You didn't leave till on Monday or Tuesday after
No,
you
we
married
did.
on
We
Saturday.
got married on Saturday night, and Papa preached on Sunday
weekend.
morning and Sunday night, and then we left on Monday morning for the assembly.
Did you just press around and them women let them see that you got it?
Rode the train. And when we got to the assembly and went to go to our room, look, Archie Luke was on the elevator, and he looked at me, and it was all men. I was the only woman on the elevator. And Papa put his arm around me and pulled me up to him, you know. And them preachers looked.
They knowed his wife had just died.
They just stared at me, and he got off the elevator when we got off and watched us to see if we went to the same room.
One of them said though, if they go in the same room, they married.
Yeah. And he told us after that, he said, I followed y'all to see if y'all went in the same room.
And went and told the rest of
Yeah.
them.
And so we went to Birmingham, Alabama on our honeymoon to the assembly. And I never
And they
forget what
lived
old,
happily ever after.
what old Sister Chambers said. She said, I'd be standing waiting on him to come out of the business meeting, and she said, You don't have to worry about him. Said he'll be here. But said my husband said, I don't know when he'll be here. But anyway, but old Helen Moore at the assembly, she got me that year. No, it wasn't that year, but it was one year. She said, come on, and it was after me and her had him. But we was good friends after that.
Well, you didn't tell us what you said to straighten her out.
Oh, that was like when we moved to Florence.
Yeah.
Mother had come,